Shabbat Shalom. How nice to be with you this morning. A few months ago, it was an honor to offer some words for our Rosh Hashanah services, our New Year and then Day of Atonement services 10 days later. At that time, on the New Year, I asked everyone to consider their relationship with water. Water being a motif that appears quite a lot in the Torah readings for the first day and second day of Rosh Hashanah, especially the first day. And in it, on that day, we talked about the ongoing reality of the severe drought in California, how we, especially in the Southland, but in so much of our beloved state and across the West, were quite literally counting every drop, working so hard to reduce our water consumption, to be incredibly grateful for the tap that turned on every day and provided us with the elixir of life that is water. And looking ahead to the winter, at that time, some of you might remember, I mentioned that there were different prognostications for the coming winter, this very one that we're still in. Some weather forecasts said the drought would continue unabated, and others, we have video evidence of this, mentioned that they suspected we might be experiencing atmospheric rivers this year. Now, at Rosh Hashanah, that seemed pretty impossible and really difficult to imagine. But lo and behold, those prognosticators were thus far more correct, certainly than the ones that said we would barely see a drop. Now that should tell us a couple of things. One, no matter how spectacular our technology is, and I'm always amazed that they'll say, rain beginning at 4 o'clock, and sure enough, 4 o'clock, there it comes, almost like on some crazy cosmic timer. But further out forecasts of weather are not easily exact and accurate all the time. So in thinking back about that day when the words atmospheric rivers seemed unimaginable, and the fact that, yes, it's cold and clear and everything is clean today and no immediate rain is forecast, just a few days ago, we were really sitting under some pretty intense weather. Many buildings and homes found leaks they had not discovered they had before, and there's, of course, widespread damage, unfortunately, in many places in our beloved state. So this relationship with water is a strange one. And in the section of our Torah reading that we didn't quite arrive to today because we just read a third of the portion every week, that's a very old tradition. So we're in a triennial cycle and we're in the first of the 3-year cycle. So we don't quite get as far as the start of the plagues in this week's portion, in the first triennial, but that's what, of course, begins. Right after Moses and Aaron receive their marching orders, Pharaoh refuses to listen, and the terrible cycle of natural, unnatural, supernatural disasters begin. The Torah makes no suggestions that these were natural phenomenon. These are carried about by divine intervention, and there is no question. But the fact that the first plague is a plague on the Nile, on the water source of the Egyptians, has been noted over and over again. The Nile was the most important natural feature in Egypt. It was Egypt's lifeblood, so it was fitting that it should have been struck first by God to, quote, make it bleed as though from a mortal wound. There is so much symbolism in the fact that water is the source of life, and it is also the source of death in this story. It is fitting that the Nile is struck first because it is into the Nile that Pharaoh had said, throw all of the male babies born to the Israelite women. As he cursed the Israelites with the Nile being the gravesite, so Pharaoh ultimately condemns his people to be cursed first from the Nile and last at the Sea of Reeds, when his charioteers go down to their watery grave. Water will feature so prominently in this story as it does in Genesis and as it does in our everyday lives. We have been wrestling with the idea of water, and it's always wonderful to note that traditional commentators say, why specifically did Aaron have to set his staff over the Nile to bring on the first plague? Suggestion is that because Moses was saved by the waters and in the waters of the Nile, it would have appeared ungrateful for Moses to be the one to cast the first plague with his staff. So much is said about Moses and the Israelites and the early water and birth images. Also, please remember that Moses' name, which never gets changed, of all people that we might have thought would have had a name change, I think it would have been Moses. Moses is an Egyptian name that has resonance with Hebrew, but the suggestion is that it has the idea of mishiticha, that he is taken from the water. So even Moses is named even from the action that brought him out of the water. And that's the name, of course, that he bears the rest of his life and by which we know him. We don't know him by any other name. So he himself is intimately related to water. But this water that we pray for is a blessing and a curse. And so it was not so surprising and yet a little bit heartening to open the Los Angeles Times a few days ago and see in column 1, you always know it's an important story in the LA Times when it's called column 1, and that's the title of the piece, A Blessing and a Curse. Storms in California, divine yet destructive. So that twin appearance, the twin role that water plays, the subheadline is From Prayers for Rain to Torrential Floods, Life-Giving Water Has Shaped Spiritual Beliefs, but to worship it is to fear it. So of course, my immediate thought was, oh, I hope they talk about the Jewish prayers for rain and maybe the big prayer that we offer at Shmini Atzeret at the end of the Sukkot holiday, the extra holiday where we begin praying for rain, where Kenta Rudy offers the beautiful Geshem prayer, and we start inserting prayers for rain into our standing prayer every day, our Amidah. Is that too much to hope for? But bless the Los Angeles Times in all of its foibles and flaws. It is still a fine newspaper. And here, above the fold, we have Rabbi Yoshi Zweiback, senior rabbi at Stephen Wise Temple in Bel Air, being quoted as, in Judaism, there is the concept of beneficial rain. We pray for rain in its proper amount and at the right time. Goes on to say in a piece by Deborah Netburn, Judaism emerged in the Middle East in a climate much like Southern California's. Rains came in the winter, the summers were long and dry. Today, Jewish people around the world pray for rain beginning on the last day of the fall harvest festival of Sukkot, woohoo, and continue until Passover arrives in the spring. I was so proud of them for including that, especially given the really rough time we're having. The tension between too much rain and not enough is embedded in a long and poetic prayer recited by worshipers for thousands of years, and it ends with these words, You are Adonai, our God, who causes the wind to blow and the rain to fall, for blessing and not for curse, for life and not for death, for plenty and not for lack. You can find this article online. It goes on to speak about certain other religious traditions and the Muslim tradition, the Hindu tradition, and even the ancient Aztec tradition, whose god for rain was called Tlaloc and was portrayed as both fearsome and beautiful, with royal blue skin, circular eyes made of serpents, and thick red fangs. So with that image from our Torah portion, from our experience of water, we are so grateful for the rain that has come. We hope that there will be more, but just like these images in our Torah portion, we know that water can be, yes, a blessing and a curse. May we continue to have the right amount of rain. Let us dry out just a little bit, but not for too long. May these atmospheric rivers not continue with too much fearsomeness, but may we have a good amount of rain so that we can see spring reborn and blessing come again. Shabbat shalom, friends. May our rain bring blessing.